Welcome back to Half the Battle. It's me, Daniel Levy, your host, and Shaq, your co-host. We're going to be talking UFC Minneapolis, Francis Ngannou versus Junior Dos Santos, and Shaq is going down this Saturday in Minnesota, two of the most vicious knockout artists in the history of the heavyweight division. And I have a feeling this fight's only going to end in two ways, with a canvas nap and a $50K bonus.
Yeah, for sure. Whoever wins this fight, you can definitely pencil him in for that $50K. And JDS is a top 5 heavyweight of all time. I mean, we don't got to look at his resume, but we know what this guy brings to the table. And Francis Ngannou, some people have said that he could possibly be the greatest heavyweight of all time a year ago. And, they wrote him off, and, he had a couple losses. He bounced back. And it seems like the Francis of old is back, so let's see if he continues that pattern this weekend.
Well, if he wants to be the greatest heavyweight of all time, there's no better place to start than taking out the former champion, Junior Dos Santos, the man that knocked out Cain Velasquez, the man that beat Shane Carwin back when Shane was running through everyone. Werdum knocked him out in under a minute, was supposed to fight Brock Lesnar, Coach Tough with him. Junior Cigano's got quite the legacy. Knocked out Frank Mir, Mark Hunt with a spinning kick. I mean, what hasn't Cigano done?
Yeah, he's a future UFC Hall of Famer, so let's see if Francis can beat two former champions.
Yeah, with Francis Ngannou, I mean, like Dana said, he's got the power of a Ford Escort. The only funny thing about that was he said that right before the Stipe fight, right? And then right after that, he had the Derek Lewis. But look.
It was the typical case of these young fighters that are new to this fame getting cocky, and he decided to go to France 2 weeks before his title fight. He was probably out there partying, doing God knows what. I mean, when you're knocking guys out that quickly and that viciously, you probably think you're invincible, and he had to learn he's not.
You literally thought that he was Thanos over here.
There's something in my hands that,
He literally thought he was God's gift to fighting. He's going out there to France a week before his title fight. But listen, man, I think he's been humbled. I think that now he's on a 2-fight win streak. Granted, both those wins have come under a minute, but it gives credit to his power that this guy can literally touch you once. It doesn't even have to be flush, and you can be unconscious.
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot of great fights on the undercard as well.
Yes, there are. So let's get right down to business, because first off, in the heavyweight division, we got Maurice, the crochet boss, Greene. He's 7-2, and Junior Albini is 14-5. Currently, they got Junior Albini minus 115. Maurice Greene is minus 105. Shaq, Junior Albini is coming off 3 straight losses. He's lost every single way he can lose. The decision, a submission, now most recently a knockout. He wants to get back on track here, but do you think he has what it takes to close the distance against the 6'7" Maurice Greene?
Yeah, Junior Albini had that good, impressive debut over a guy like Tim Johnson. And it seems like after that fight, people kept giving him chance after chance to prove himself. He's been the favorite in all 3 of those fights, just like he's a favorite here again. And, those 3 times it hasn't worked out. The fight against Andrei Arlovski, who at the time, even these guys that pull stunts in there against Andrei, like guys still go in there and pull stunts against Andrei, a la Walt Harris, a la Sakai, a la Marcin Tybura, and they still win, you know what I'm saying? But Albini pulled a stunt and got 30-27th. So it's like making me believe, maybe Albini's been a complete fraud this entire time. And when you really dig in, prior to the UFC, he really hadn't fought anybody. He came in there against Tim Johnson, and I actually picked Albini to win that fight because going into that fight, Tim Johnson was on a lot of people's shows complaining about money, and he was saying he needs more money, and he felt like the UFC owed him something and shit like that, and it kind of sounded like he lost motivation, and now he's getting knocked out in Bellator, so there's a good chance that grinding style of Tim just couldn't work anymore, and Junior, perfect timing, slid in there and knocked him out. But Junior's style is just to throw power shots. His volume is very low. His cardio is proven that it's not very good. Look at the Arlovski fight. Arlovski, honestly, gave him a clinic. I mean, he just threw straight shots on him, went to his body. Albini couldn't catch him. He's got a good left foot, but if you stand there along with Albini, he's what we like to call a stunt puller. He takes Alexi down. He literally gives Alexi the Ezekiel choke.
He stares at Arlovski.
He stares at Arlovski when he's minus 330 something, and everyone puts their entire account on him. You know what I'm saying? What's Arlovski's record in his last 10, 11 fights? Like 2-9. So, and then his last fight with Rosenstrike, Rosenstrike definitely is a credentialed kickboxer, but at the time going into that matchup, we were saying Albini's too experienced for him because Rosenstrike's only got 5 fights and he just started MMA the other day. And to be honest, Albini was on the ropes by the end of that first round and he got knocked out right away in the second. So, Maurice Greene, on the other hand, they portrayed this guy on Tough as if he was a drunk. And I mean, he wasn't there drinking, that's for sure. And, he's had some...
Tony Ferguson was too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he ain't the first drunk on Tough. There's been plenty drunk. Some of your favorite fighters were in that Tough house sacking a fucking ass. You know what I'm saying? So, it makes for good TV. They gotta have a drunk guy. You know what I'm saying? And Maurice Greene was that guy, and he made the semifinals. He lost to Espino, the eventual winner, and he got ran through against Espino. But
real quick, sorry to interrupt. Where's Espino been? I haven't seen his ass.
I think he's injured. Like he had an injury.
Oh, he's injured.
Yeah. And he's really old, so.
Gotcha.
But he's really good. But it's heavyweight, he can make a run at heavyweight at 50. So. But yeah, so Maurice. One thing he's always shown is glimpses of a guy, he's 6'7", a former basketball player. He knows how to use his length with the teeps, the jabs, and the elbows at range. Prior to going into the Tough House, he lost to Jeff Hughes, and he avenged that loss with his fight after he submitted that guy that split wrestling matches with Daniel Cormier. I forget his name, Batista. And, he bounced back with that fight against Jeff Hughes, who, in my opinion, is more of a long-term heavyweight, a guy with better cardio than Albini. And Maurice Greene stayed in there, used his length, hurt Jeff Hughes a couple times with jabs, hurt him with elbows a couple times. And when you're 6'7" and you impose that type of range on your opponents who are a little shorter, now Albini's definitely a little taller than Jeff Hughes, but one thing about Albini is he's that typical Brazilian fighter that gasses as the rounds progress on. And I think Maurice Greene has good weapons as the fight progresses on with the teeps of the body to make Albini tired, make him to start look for ways out of this fight. And, I feel like Albini's confidence has got to be really low. Currently, I mean, look at his last 3 fights. They've just been a disaster. If things start to go wrong in this fight again, I think he's going to start to look for ways out again or possibly get finished. I think you're going to see the best Maurice Greene. I think he's cleaned up a lot of things in his life. He's been training in Colorado at Factory X. And, not that means anything per se, but I just think if you push Albini, he'll look for ways out.
Yeah, look, I think that ever since they gave Albini that $50K bonus, the guy's gone completely off the rails. And it happens for some guys. I mean, you remember when Pat Barry got 2 $50K bonuses in that one fight? Jason Knight, when Pat Barry fought, was it Anthony Hardonk, and he got two bonuses for that fight? And then he got knocked out every single fight after that, you know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things where, you just shouldn't have given Junior Albini a $50K bonus because, no, I mean, I'm talking a little bit of shit, but the reality here is that Junior Albini just wasn't that good to begin with, and that's the reality. I mean, he's a basic Thai striker, has some pretty heavy leg kicks. I mean, he's a big boy, but man, he's kind of out of shape and kind of just questionable fight IQ. Now the confidence is definitely within question here, man. With Maurice Greene, I was kind of under the impression at first that it was this big joke, the way they portrayed him on Tough. I didn't really watch that show closely. I was like, oh, it's that guy Maurice Greene. He's smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol. He's not going to last. And then he goes in there against a Cuban Olympian, a guy that defeated Daniel Cormier in wrestling, and he taps him out in the first round. I was like, oh shit, like this guy Maurice Greene ain't that bad. I mean, it's not every day you see a heavyweight going for triangles off their back and getting them, so I was kind of like, okay, not bad. Next fight goes in there as a big underdog against a guy who had already beat him a year prior, and man, he was using his range really nicely. I just feel like the finished product of Maurice Greene is far superior to whatever Junior Albini is gonna be in his finished product, and unfortunately, this is Junior Albini's finished product because I think after he takes this L, this is the last time we're going to see him, man. So I think that the 6'7" Greene, keep this on the outside, use that teep, use that jab. If it hits the mat, attack off his back. But if not, try to get on top. And I think if he puts Junior in a bad spot, in a really bad spot, you might not see Junior fight out of it. So I'm going to go with Maurice Greene here for the victory. Next up in the strawweight division, we got Emily Whitmire. She's 4-2, and Amanda Ribas is 6-1. Currently, they got Emily Whitmire minus 170. The comeback on Amanda Ribas is plus 150. Well, Shaq, obviously, you know the deal with both of these. Emily Whitmire on the 2-fight win streak, just finished Albu in under a minute. And with Amanda Ribas, she got suspended by USADA for about 2 years. was knocked out by Polyana Viana in the first round, but now she's making her comeback, making her UFC debut. Do you think she has what it takes to stop the streaking Emily Whitmire?
Yeah, this is it's a tough fight because Ribas, got the USADA suspension 2 years ago. Hasn't fought in 3 years, and she did get knocked out by Polyana Viana, who's a complete fraud.
But Polyana Viana knocked out that mugger.
Yeah, right.
My header knocked him out.
I've been told you that. Like, come on now, bro. Ain't no way Polyana can inflict that type of damage.
You saw the Ribas fight?
Shit, bro. But anyways, Whitmire, she's got a decent skill set. There is a chance people are overrating where she's at, but she's got a good takedown game. She definitely knows what to do on that mat. Her last 2 fights, she got takedowns and exploded her opponents on the mat. And Ribas, man, it's just she's kind of a mystery because you can watch these little videos on her Instagram. It kind of does look like possibly there's a chance she's a little more competent in the stand-up. She is Brazilian. She trains at ATT. She comes from a fighting family. Like, she might be live, but I gotta go with Whitmire. She's shown me much more as of recently. It seems like she's improving fight to fight. It seems like her confidence level is improving fight to fight. Her losses have only come to respectable people, and Roxanne on Tough, and who's top 5, and Jillian, who's somewhat of a submission specialist. So, I think Whitmire's probably going to come out here, maybe get tagged a little bit, but eventually start to work these takedowns and make the Brazilian get a little tired, and, make her feel that layoff and get a decision win.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Emily Whitmire as well. Obviously, you got to take into consideration the momentum and the confidence that she has coming into this matchup. 2 straight wins inside the octagon, a unanimous decision win followed by a first-round submission. And her only loss was to Jillian Robertson, like you said. Turned out to be kind of a submission specialist for that division. And with Ribas, getting knocked out by Polyana Viana in the first round, that's very alarming, man. Because Polyana Viana, most of her wins, she's going out there and submitting these girls, maybe eking out a split decision type thing. But to get knocked out by her in the first round, that tells me everything I need to know about Amanda Ribas. Now, the one caveat is that she's been out 3 years. So has she developed into a brand new fighter in those 3 years? That's what we don't know. Or has she just been battling USADA this entire time? We really don't know. So that being said, I'm going to take Emily Whitmire because based on the last version of Ribas we've seen, Whitmire, I'd say that her weakness is in the stand-up, and I don't think Amanda possesses what it takes to challenge her there. And then you take it to the mat, and I don't see Amanda Ribas having, the same kind of jiu-jitsu as a specialist like Jillian Robertson. So therefore, I do think Emily has the edge here. But for a 4-2 fighter who has had questionable moments in the past, I'm not willing to lay that chalk. But you give me pick'em price, and I'm going Emily Whitmire. Next up in the light heavyweight division, we got Dalcha champion, he's 9-1, and Dequan Townsend is 21-8. Currently, they got Dalcha champion minus 275. The comeback on Dequan Townsend is plus 250. Well, Shaq, you got the African champ, Dalcha. He was the heavyweight champ and the light heavyweight champ over in EFC, taking on Dequan Townsend, who literally got the call on a week's short notice, filling in for Justin Ledet. Do you think Dequan Townsend can take this fight off the couch and come in here and beat the African champ?
Yeah, I think this is a prime spot for Dalcha to come in here and get his a win in his UFC debut. His initial fight with Ledet was definitely going to be a little more challenging. Ledet's got 3 octagon wins and was coming off 2 fights against the 2 top prospects at 205 pounds. So, it was going to be a step down in competition for Ledet. But now that this guy, Ledet's out, and now they're bringing in Townsend, a guy who, is somewhat of a journeyman, definitely an exciting fighter. It seems like a tough guy, but, at the end of the day, I'm glad that, he made it to the UFC, but if Ledet didn't get injured, he wouldn't be here, you know what I'm saying? So, and the fact that, he's probably not anywhere as good a shape as Dalcha is. Dalcha's been off for a year, getting a lot better, priming for this opportunity, this UFC debut, and I feel like he got a lesser opponent. Dequan Townsend's a guy that his takedown defense is not the best, and he's never been knocked out before, but also he's never been his chin's never been tested like how it's gonna get tested against Dalcha. Dalcha's a guy that he's got very good athletic tools with the explosion on his takedowns. This guy has a very fast shot, will lift guys up, slam them, and he's got a good right hand. We've seen him get vicious, stiff knockouts in the past, and he's a good round winner too, man. He's got 2 belts in EFC, and he fought guys that were bigger than him. Times where he's been in trouble, he had to switch up the game plan, make an adjustment, and either get takedowns or use calf kicks. The guy knows how to think on the fly for a very muscular guy. But, you know, his weakness moving down the line is probably going to be his cardio when he fights better guys. But in this particular case, this guy, Dequan Townsend, is probably not going to be in tip-top shape for this opportunity. And he might fight spirited early, but if he wants to do that, he might get caught. But if this fight extends, I feel like it's going to favor Dalcha, the size, and just the power is going to be too much for Dequan. So I'm going to go with Dalcha by a second-round knockout.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point about how Dalcha had a much tougher opponent on paper in Justin Ledet, because, I mean, look, Ledet obviously coming off those losses to Walker and Rakic, but those are the two top prospects at 205. This is a big step down in competition. So Dalcha is probably going to come out here and get a UFC win. Look, Dalcha is a guy that is super naturally explosive, and you watch some of his earlier fights, and it wasn't even much skill involved. The guy would just run over guys with his raw power and athleticism. But now that he's really taken his time and started to put it all together, he's risen up, become a champ down there in South Africa, won the 205 belt, the heavyweight belt. And, man, the guy's overcome adversity in his fights before. He had this one with Stuart Austin where, you know, you can sit here and tell me that it could have gotten stopped in the first round. It could have, but it didn't. And then he goes out there and stops Stuart Austin in the second round. And, I mean, Stuart Austin, look, that's a guy that was in there with Johnny Walker as well. So I just feel like the level of competition these guys are fighting is completely different, whereas Dequan Townsend, so his last fight, he fought a 40-year-old with a 7-9 record. He finished him in the first round, as you're supposed to. The fight before that, he fought Portland Pringle. Like, listen, guys, you know how I make these jokes about the NFC, this guy wouldn't even be NFC champ, this and that. Portland Pringle was in the NFC. I called his fight, and I can just tell you right now, Portland Pringle was brought in to lose to Doug Usher. Well, Daquan's going to split decisions with Portland Pringle. And honestly, he should have lost that fight, but it was in his hometown. You know, he got laid on for 3 straight rounds, and they raised his arm the winner. You know how it goes with those hometown decisions, but bottom line, Dequan has no takedown defense, so I really think that Dalcha can mix it up on the feet. I think that as soon as he wants to put him on the mat, he can pick him up and slam him. And if this goes the distance, I think that he will have the better cardio in this spot. Now, moving forward, he's going to have to tighten some things up. He's going to have to, maybe train over here in the States for a little bit. But right now, I do think that the man known as the Wakanda Warrior is going to come in here and get a big win in his UFC debut. Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got Jared Flash Gordon. He's 14-3, and Dan the Hitman Moret is 13-5. Currently, they got Jared Gordon minus 325. The comeback on Dan Moret is plus 265. Well, Shaq, are you kind of surprised they have a guy coming off 2 vicious, brutal, back-to-back stiffening KOs? Minus 325 here in this spot?
That's a very good question, but those 2 guys that he lost to are 100 times better than Dan Moret. So, this is a step down in competition for Gordon. Just put it this way, if you put Moret in there against Neto BJJ and Carlos Diego Ferreira, there's a good chance they have to bring a stretcher into the octagon. Or the smelling salt's kind of similar to the Gilbert Burns fight, But yeah, Moret's a very tough guy. It seems like he just likes to tie guys up and take the back and try to hug guys. Gordon's I don't think he's that type of guy. He's got very good takedowns. He's got a very good ground game. I mean, he actually took Neto down and stayed in his guard for a little while, which is something I've never seen anyone else do to Neto, because Neto's his get-up game is absolutely disgusting for the most part. So, I was actually surprised in that area, but minus 325 might be a little steep, but I ultimately do think Gordon's just a better fighter in every aspect of the game. Moret might fight tough. He's got a lot of heart, but, I question his durability. And, I just think that his offense really isn't effective enough. And I don't think Jared Gordon's takedown defense is bad. So I got to go with Jared Gordon probably by a 30-27 unanimous decision.
Yeah, look, I question both guys' durability, both guys' confidence coming into this fight. Look, both guys' backs are up against the wall. They desperately need this win. Loser is going home, and that's a fact. I just think that Jared Gordon can probably push a little harder for the 3-round duration. That's going to be the difference here. With Dan Moret, I mean, he couldn't push past the second round with Alex White, and that was kind of alarming. And I know Jared Gordon's been having some cardio issues too. You saw that hot ground fight, got pretty ugly there. You saw the Neto BJJ fight, obviously. And it's going to be interesting to see if Dan Moret can use his length, tie up a guy like Jared Gordon, make him work, drag him to the mat. But the thing is, then he's going to have to deal with... Apparently, Jared Gordon's a Renzo Gracie black belt. I just found out, so he's going to have to deal with that on the mat. But Dan Moret has tapped out teammates of Jared Gordon before. He finished Jordan Griffin in the first round with a rear naked choke. So I'm not counting him out here, man, because I don't know what kind of confidence Jared has coming into this fight. Those 2 vicious stiffenings. Yeah, that would have happened to Dan Moret too, but it did happen to Jared Gordon. So I don't trust him at all at this price, man. But I still think he's the more skilled guy. So I'll take him by default. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got Jordan Griffin, he's 17-6, and Vince Murdock is 12-3. Currently, they got Jordan Griffin minus 400. The comeback on Vince Murdock is plus 325. Well, Shaq, you got another last-minute replacement here in Vince Murdock taking this fight on, 2 weeks short notice, filling in for Chas Skelly. So, man, he's coming from... He trains at Alpha Male in California, but most of his fights have been on that Indian regional scene against 2-2 guys, 3-3 guys. Now he gets to fight in the UFC against Jordan Griffin. How do you see it going down?
Murdock seems like a lesser version of Cody Garbrandt. You know, they look alike and they fight very similar. Mostly hands, not many kicks. A little chinny, a little stiff. Seems like they need back surgery, so seems like he's a version of Cody Garbrandt. And Griffin, he's a very scrappy guy. His defensive grappling, I don't want to say it's a weakness. When he's fighting guys like Ige, etc., guys on that level, that is going to be his issue. The takedown defense is something that he struggles with. Now, Vince Murdock, he's coming in taking this fight on short notice, so we know that Griffin's probably going to be in better shape than him, considering he had a fight with Skelly booked, a couple months ago. And Murdock just seems like he's a basic brawler, but just a guy that looks for knockouts, Like I said, this guy doesn't really mix it up too much. Seems like a tough guy. I will say he probably has better hands than Griffin, but better hands for 3 rounds? I don't know. Maybe better hands for a couple minutes. But as the fight progresses and as the conditioning sinks in, I could see Griffin taking over this fight with his volume and his tenacity and his pace. And he's a very long guy. He throws punches at weird angles. He's even scrappy on the mat too if he has a lesser guy in there with him. So I think he's going to come out here. Might be a little slow to start off just because you do have to respect Murdock's hands to an extent. But I think Griffin's going to win this fight. Probably finish him in the 3rd round by submission or TKO, and finally get his first UFC win. I just think he's going to be in a lot better shape than Vince Murdock.
Yeah, you got obviously the kind of shape that they're in because one guy had a full camp, one guy's taking it off the couch, but more than that, I just think that Jordan Griffin is a much more experienced and skilled guy than Vince Murdock, and not only that, the level of competition he's been fighting, it's not even close. I mean, one guy was just in there 3 rounds with Dan Ige. The other guy, let me tell you the exact opponent he fought in his last fight, just so you guys know. His last fight, he fought Justin King, who is 7-6. You understand what I'm saying? Prior to that, he fought Vikas Dakia, who's 3-2. Prior to that, my boy Krishan Rawat, who's 2-2. You see the trend here? He's fighting a bunch of 500 fighters that have no business anywhere near the UFC. And Jordan Griffin's out here fighting Dan Ige. Fight prior to that was on Contender Series. So it's just a big difference in the level of competition and in the skill set and in the confidence and in the preparation. So with that being said, man, I think that Jordan Griffin's going to be elusive like he is, dart in from weird angles with those long punches. His one weakness would be his takedown defense, but he said that he's not going to go for the guillotines as much this time. Now he's going to focus on defending those takedowns, keeping the fight standing, and showing off his bread and butter, man. So I think the Rufus Sport product is going to come out here with his first UFC win. I got Jordan Griffin. Now, next up in the light heavyweight division, we got Vinicius Moreira. He's 9-2, and Eryk, your boy Anders, is 11-4. Currently, they got Eryk Anders minus 355. The comeback on Vinicius Mamouche Moreira is plus 295. Well, Shaq, once again, you got Eryk Anders north of 3-1, almost 4-1 here. You think the underdog Vinicius is worth a look?
Eryk Anders is a big favorite in this fight, and it's mainly due to because Vinicius is a punching bag that gets tagged with every punch. And I feel like that's not the way to necessarily look at this fight, because Vinicius, I would consider him more of a specialist. I would consider him a guy that, if you're not on point in the early rounds, or if you don't know how to stay composed throughout the 15 minutes, or if your takedown defense is a little suspect, he might submit you in the first round. You just have to be on your P's and Q's. Guys like Alonzo Menifield with devastation in their hands that can take him out with one punch. And to be honest, I don't want to say it was an early stoppage, but Mamouche was still working back up to his feet. Like he wasn't unconscious at all. Like he was like, wait. You know what I'm saying? But I feel like Eryk Anders doesn't possess that type of devastation in his hands. Eryk's actually more of a grinder, a guy that gets better as the fight goes on, and I would consider Eryk a slow starter. So I do think the line should be a little closer. I have seen Eryk get taken down by guys a lot lighter than Mamouche like Tim Williams a couple times. Yeah, Maluko, guys that are way lighter than Mamouche. So if Mamouche can come out here and capitalize on a slow starter like Eryk Anders, he's lost the first round in a lot of his fights. He's a guy that gets better as the fight progresses. I feel like, plus 300, for how line the wide is, it kind of matches Vinicius's path to victory. He has to get on top of him and capitalize on Eryk, crush his confidence right away, put him in another losing type of situation. If the fight progresses on, Eryk, he does have a grueling style. This guy is very tough. He is very durable. He will take his ass whooping like a man. But Vinicius isn't really gonna dish out no ass whooping. Vinicius is a guy that I kind of compare him to Ryan James in a sense, because he's like a scarecrow. Like, you might use all your energy trying to knock him out, just like the guy he fought on Contender Series, and the next thing you know, you're really tired, and the next thing you know, he's on top of you, smashing your head in, getting a rear naked choke or an armbar. The line is too wide. I definitely can't trust Eryk at this price. Personally, I wouldn't bet Vinicius just because he takes too much damage to win a decision. So if he does not get rid of Eryk out with that submission, he's probably going to lose. But, I feel like it should be closer to the opener, even a little less. But I'm going to pick Eryk by decision. I just don't trust him at that line.
Yeah, I don't trust him at the line either. Just feel like I'd rather sit back and watch this fight unfold, man. Because with Vinicius Moreira, yeah, like you said, if you start to get sloppy in there, you start to get a little tired, then he'll capitalize. He'll take a limb home, maybe even your neck. But Eryk Anders doesn't really have a neck to choke, man. The way he's built, it's going to be kind of hard to submit a guy like that, in my opinion at least. And I kind of feel like people are overrating Vinicius' jiu-jitsu a little bit. Yeah, don't get me wrong. He's a legit black belt for sure, but people are kind of acting like, this guy is like Davi Ramos level or something like that. Like this fight hits the mat one time, it'll be over shortly after. And I just disagree, man. I don't think that'll be the case at all. I think the only way he wins by submission is if Eryk is gassed to a point where there's no choice but to give up, to give up that tap. But I don't see that happening, man. I kind of feel like Vinicius is going to kind of run into a brick wall in this spot. Maybe come out hard in that first round because I know he likes to brawl. I know he's scrappy, and I know Eryk's a slow starter. Eryk kind of doesn't throw as much as he should, but by that second or third round, I do think that the momentum's going to start to swing in Eryk's favor, and I can see him also getting a decision here, maybe even a late TKO. Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got Ricardo Ramos. He's 12-2, and Journey Newson is 9-1. Currently, they got Ricardo Ramos minus 335. The comeback on Journey Newson is plus 275. Shaq, once again, another short notice replacement. This time, Journey Newson is stepping up for Sergio Pettis. Sergio versus Ricardo would have been a great fight, but I'll tell you what, this kid, Journey Newson, 9-1, worked his way up. We've seen him knock people out. We've seen him go the distance. Do you think he has what?
We've seen him knock a couple bums out. Look, Journey Newson is a mystery. He's taking the fight on short notice. I hear some people say he's good. I see some, it's just, how do you know? He's only got his first two pro fights online. You've seen a couple clips of him knocking probably a guy that Ricardo would knock out in 2 seconds as well. So it's really tough to say. I got to go with Ricardo here. He had the full camp, kind of similar to the Griffin and the Murdock situations and the Dalcha and the Townsend situations. I think Journey Newson will probably go on to win a UFC fight down the line. I wouldn't write Ricardo off just yet because of that one loss to Saeed. I know he has had some questionable moments in his wins as well, but at the same time, this kid got into the UFC at a very young age. He's still learning. I know he tends to quit in those third rounds every time, but he's a very young kid. I still think he's very talented in the jiu-jitsu and the scrambles. And if you're not on point, especially in comparison to those three guys he fought, now I know Tanaka's a fraud, but Tanaka beat Joe Soto at one point, you know what I'm saying? And then, Kyung Ho Kang, a respectable bantamweight, and Zahabi, in which he ended his life. So, I feel like Ricardo's going to come out here and either win by decision or submission, This is a step down in competition for Ramos.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I actually liked Ricardo Ramos as an underdog versus Sergio Pettis. I thought that was a very favorable matchup for him. I was willing to take that shot, but now that got canceled, I kind of like him as a favorite here versus Journey Newson. But am I willing to bet it? That's a different story. Go to bestfightpicks.com to find out. But honestly, though, I just feel like Ricardo Ramos is the longer guy, the more experienced guy, and I think he's got something to prove here, man. Journey Newson, I like the guy. He's a little spark plug, man. He's a little short, 5'5" guy, throws big bombs. He's a lot of fun to watch. I think he'd have a lot more success at flyweight, but, taking this on short notice up a weight class. I know a lot of his fights have been at bantamweight, but in the UFC, this guy would be a flyweight between you and me. But Here, I think this is a good spot for Ricardo to come in here and start to patch up some of the holes in his game, man. Just because he lost to Saeed Nurmagomedov don't mean it's over. Saeed is very legit, guys, so I wouldn't hold that against Ricardo Ramos at all, man. I think that this is a good spot for him to go out here and test those new parts of his game, try to show off his stand-up, take it to the mat, show that jiu-jitsu if this gets extended. Try to improve that cardio, man, because that's been the weakness in the past. So I think Ricardo comes out here, and I think he gets it done. Now, next up in the light heavyweight division, we got Paul the Bear Jew Craig. He's 11-3, and Alonzo Menifield is 8-0. Currently, they got Alonzo Menifield minus 300. The comeback on Paul Craig is plus 250. Shaq, at this point, we know how to break down a Paul Craig fight. Is Paul Craig going to get his ass beat and get that third round triangle or not?
Yeah, that's a very good question. He's the big question in this fight is in comparison to the Kennedy and the Ankalaev fight is, Menifield definitely throws a devastation in comparison to those two guys. Both those guys are more of pointers, and both those guys are winning the entire fights, and they got spooked and they got submitted. I think that Menifield honestly probably isn't that good overall. But I think that he throws with so much power that the mistakes that Paul Craig makes, this is the time where he's finally going to get knocked out stiff. This guy, Menifield, former football player, he might just walk forward and commit to knocking Paul. Like, he's that type of guy. Like, he's got that type of mindset. I'm going to walk forward and just take you out. So I'm going to go with Menifield by knockout. But from a betting perspective, it's dog or pass. Menifield's very young in his career. He had a good performance against Mamouche, another black belt with who gets triangles and arm bars like that. So he's got some experience against black belts. And but Paul Craig, I respect him. He's the king of the fluke sub. But I got to go with Menifield by vicious KO.
Paul Craig will always have a place on the roster because what he's known for, basically when he wins, he always gets a performance of the night, but he's out here testing the prospects and literally in order. They put him in there with Tyson Pedro, who was the undefeated prospect at the time, Khalil Roundtree, Magomed Ankalaev, Jimmy Crute, Kennedy Nzechukwu, and now Alonzo Menifield. So literally they have the same plans for Paul Craig every single time. Test out our new prospects against Paul Craig, see where they're really at. And last fight, Paul Craig fought Alonzo Menifield's teammate, Kennedy Nzechukwu, and Kennedy was winning that fight. I mean, there were some sketchy moments, but he was winning that fight up until 1 minute left in the fourth round, made a mistake, got caught in that triangle, and now we got to see if Alonzo Menifield is going to do the same thing. Because, look, the reality here is that Alonzo Menifield, it's interesting to say that Paul Craig's fought tougher competition, but that's the truth, man. I mean, Alonzo Menifield a couple fights ago was getting taken down by guys like Daniel Jolly, and I'm serious about this, but I think that his raw power, his athleticism, the camp he comes from, Fortis MMA, I think that Alonzo Menifield has a higher ceiling, and I think that he's going to be making the kind of improvements fight by fight where he can come in here in his second UFC appearance and beat a guy like Paul Craig. Just has to have the right game plan. Now, I heard a little interview with Alonzo saying that he thinks he has the best ground and pound in the 205-pound division, and that this fight versus Paul Craig it's my ground and pound versus your bottom game. Your triangles versus my ground and pound. Now, I'm not sure if he's just talking a little shit, put on a little show for the fans, get people intrigued, because I would recommend not sitting in Paul Craig's guard and trying to see if you can land punches and try to avoid his triangles. I would just make him stand up and try to bang with you. But then again, Alonzo might be talking. Fighters say a lot of things before fights, and at the end of the day, when you have a coach like Saif Saud, he's telling him, Alonzo, keep this shit standing the entire time. And I think if he does that, he's going to come out here and win. He just has to do that. Now, his last fight against Vinicius Moreira, he did show me signs that he's able to do that. Vinicius actually attacked with Paul Craig's finishing move, the triangle, and Alonzo made him get back up. Now, the difference is with Paul Craig, you might not have the jiu-jitsu credentials of Mamouche, but for MMA jiu-jitsu, I'd go ahead and say that he's got a better submission game than Mamouche for MMA standards, and I think that if he locks you in that triangle, it is over. Just the way this dude hips move in MMA, whatever it is, man, he gets you in that triangle, you're not getting out. But bottom line, Alonzo has to be prepared for that. Having a coach like Saif Saud with his game plan, he has to be prepared for this. So I think by default, he's going to come out here and avoid it, possibly knock him out. But listen, at this point, if you're willing to take a shot on Paul Craig, you know the deal here. Get your ass beat for a little bit and pray for the triangle. But if you don't get it, he's going to get his ass beat the entire fight and lose. I'm going to go with Alonzo Menifield, but I would like a better price if I were to play him. Next up in the lightweight division, we got Drew Dober. He's 20-9, and Polo Reyes is 9-5. Currently, they got Drew Dober minus 335. The comeback on Polo Reyes is plus 275. Well, Shaq, two of the funnest brawlers in the lightweight division about to go at it. I have a feeling they're going to stand and bang until one man falls. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, it's going to be a good fight. Polo Reyes is one of these exciting Mexican fighters with a lot of heart. And Drew Dober, he's a national Muay Thai champion. And, his stand-up looked good his last fight. He's got good volume, very good cardio. His wrestling's getting better as well. But, that jiu-jitsu of his has always been a weakness. But he doesn't have to worry about in this fight because Polo Reyes' jiu-jitsu is not very good at all. Prior to Polo Reyes' last fight, I was kind of under the speculation that the guy could be a complete fraud because what's his record, like 8-5?
9-5 if you include my boy Frivola's vicious KO.
Oh, they didn't count that?
No. Because he was on those supplements.
This is a guy that, has been KO'd by bums in the past, like Horacio Gutierrez. He struggled with bums like Jason Novelli and got...
Real bums. We're talking... my boy Ran Weathers finished him.
You know what I'm saying? Ran Weathers beat... Is that true?
I'm pretty damn sure that's fucking true, bro.
Gabriel beat... I lost to Ran Weathers.
Nah, Ran Weathers beat Polo Reyes, bro.
Click on Ran Weathers. Did he beat Gabriel?
Did he beat Gabriel too? Nah, he beat Diego Brandao.
Oh, yeah, Diego. Yeah, this guy, Polo Reyes, there's definitely a good chance the guy's a complete fraud, unless you fight him like an idiot, like Frivola, and you give him a puncher's chance, and then he might clip something, but his fight with Maestro Dong Kim was a great fight, but the fans and the public overrated that fight to a point where they actually thought he was a good fighter because that fight, trust me, if you put both them guys in there with anyone else, they both get knocked the fuck out very quickly. And, it was a great fight for the fans, but what has he been up to since? He's been 500, 1-2 actually. He's 1-2 since, or 2-1.
He's 1-2.
He's 1-2, and he's out here getting mounted by strikers like Damir Hatzovic and getting his
who got wrestled his very next fight.
I mean, Polo had me fooled that Damir was a good fighter.
He made us think that Damir made improvements in his ground game.
So, Polo Reyes, he probably is a complete fraud. Jason Novelli, Jason Novelli, the guy's nickname is Pepsi, you know what I'm saying? The guy's you go back and watch what Tamor did to him, and then you go back and watch the shit show him and Polo Reyes put on down there in Mexico, and Polo Reyes got fully mounted by that guy, and that guy's harmless. So, if Dober fights smart, he's probably gonna make Polo Reyes desperate in the striking, but like kind of similar to the Namir fight. People were saying Polo was winning the stand-up. He wasn't winning no stand-up exchanges at all. And, he's a club fighter, he's an entertaining Mexican fighter. So as long as Dober fights smart, he should take it. But at that line, I don't trust Dober. He's a guy that he's also somewhat of a stunt puller, man. The guy, and I'll go ahead and name those stunts. Efrain Escudero, stunt. Sean Spencer, stunt. Buscape, I know he didn't tap, but that it happened. Like, why'd the ref think you were...
my Buscape bet cashed.
Yeah, if you bet Buscape, you won. And then you got the Benil fight was a stunt too because Dober should have stayed. He didn't show composure for a guy with that many fights in his UFC career. A better guy would have stayed composure and knocked Benil out in that spot. But Dober proved that he's not on that level once again. But he does have some. But when you really look at his wins, we're talking about Josh Berkman. We're talking about Frank Camacho. Losing record. We're talking about John Tuck, fraud. Jason Gonzalez, fraud. He's got Jamie Varner, fraud. Tony Sims, fraud. He's got one good win over Holtzman, But, it could be lined high, but you got to go with Dober. He's the more complete fighter. He still is more proven than Polo Reyes. Polo Reyes is 34 years old. Questionable durability, questionable ground game, questionable everything.
Yeah, basically I view it as Drew Dober is a top 50 fighter and Polo Reyes is a top 100 fighter. That's the bottom line. But the one thing that's interesting here is it could be a dog or pass situation because these two are going to stand and bang. And one thing about Polo Reyes, we can criticize his chin, his cardio, his fight IQ, his ground game, but the dude hits very hard. And Drew Dober's going to give him that opportunity to land on his chin. And I'll tell you this, that French guy OAM dropped Drew Dober. That that UFC washout Efrain Escudero finished Drew Dober in under a minute. So Sean Spencer, you guys remember that guy? The one that Yancy Madero's head kicked? He 30-27 Drew Dober.
The guy that Pyle embarrassed in front of the guy that chinny ass Pyle beat.
By knockout, by the way.
Dober.
So I'm just saying, don't put your life savings on Drew Dober. You know what? Fuck it, man. I'm gonna go on the opposite side. This is a dog or pass situation. You can never lay over 3-1 on a guy like Drew Dober. I'm gonna go with Polo Reyes by knockout here. Next up in the lightweight division, we got Vinc Pichel. He's 11-2, and Roosevelt Roberts is 8-0. Currently, they got Roosevelt Roberts minus 280. The comeback on Vinc Pichel is plus 240. Well, Shaq, what's interesting about this fight is that Vinc Pichel, he's the vet here. He's taking on Roosevelt Roberts, who's the prospect. But, man, they're basically ranked around the same area, both around, the top 60. And even though Vinc Pichel is a lot older than Roosevelt Roberts, man, I'll tell you what, he kind of has a young vibe about him. I know he's 36 years old, but, man, the guy kind of seems like he still loves fighting. He's 11 years older than Roosevelt Roberts, but I know that Vinc Pichel, he enjoys what he does. The question is, can one of Dana's top prospects, because you remember that list that Dana gave out publicly when he mentioned his top prospects, Roosevelt was on that list. Can Dana's top lightweight prospect, Roosevelt Roberts, come out here and beat the battle-tested Vinc Pichel?
Roosevelt's definitely very talented. And Vinc Pichel is one of these guys, like you said, he is a little older, but he's young in the sport. He started very late in age. And, he comes from one of the best seasons of Tough out there. He comes from Tough 50, made it to the semifinals. Had a good fight with Ali Akinta. Has a win over Neto BJJ. Neto's only pro loss. Vinc Pichel did put Demian beat down Brown in the ground in the first round. Not too many people can say that. So Vinc Pichel, he's coming off this loss to Gregor Gillespie. Gregor's now a top 10, top 9 guy, actually. So we know that Gregor Gillespie is on a completely different level. Roosevelt's very talented. I would definitely say this is the biggest challenge of his career just because Pichel, I think that these guys like Thomas Gifford and Daryl Horcher are, nice guys, but Vinc Pichel brings a different type of intensity to the game. And Pichel's just one of these guys where not everyone might feel the same because, we really don't see him that much. He is a very inactive type of guy. But I've been following the guy for a very long time. I just know that when they get in there, it's going to be, if you give Pichel a stand-up type of fight, it's going to be a brawl and it's going to be a war. He's not the type of guy to not pull the trigger or things like that. The thing with Roosevelt is he's very young and he ooks of that energy, and Pichel is older. So if Roosevelt plays a smart game plan, very safe type of fight, it might frustrate a guy like Pichel into a point where he's looking at Roosevelt like, come on, bro, let's fight, because that's what the type of fight Pichel he wants big exchanges. He wants a chance for a knockout. This guy's got 8 knockouts and 11 wins. He's gonna have to do something that no one's ever done to Roosevelt. In my opinion, from a betting perspective, it's dog or pass, just because I feel like Pichel's one of these underrated kind of badasses, man. One of these guys that if you get into an exchange with him, watch out, because the guy hits very hard. Like I said, he's got to win over Neto BJJ, and to beat Neto BJJ, you need a lot of composure. You know what I'm saying? Because Neto hits like a fucking truck.
Watch that Jared Gordon fight.
Yeah, you need composure, and Pichel, look, on the given day, he can have that. So from a betting perspective, it's 100% dog or pass for me. Roosevelt's not tested at this level, but I think it's a reasonable step up in competition. Get him a guy that's 36 years old, a little older, coming off a severe beating. It's probably perfect timing for Roosevelt, so therefore I will go with him, but I think it's going to be a closer decision, 29-28. It seems like, I would say, the only somewhat weakness I see in Roosevelt is if you pressure him. It seems like he likes to rely on his fundamental defense with his back on the fence. But, certain guys you do that with, you might get knocked out. Like I said, against Gifford and Daryl Horcher, it's going to be fine. But we're going to see how he responds to in this step up in competition. But I'll go with Roosevelt, but from a betting perspective, it's dog or pass.
Like, the deal with these undefeated prospects, it's always first L time. So if Vinc wants to come out here and give Roosevelt that vet lesson, it's not going to surprise me one bit. But the thing is, man, obviously, Roosevelt's got the higher ceiling. It's just about where he's at right now. And, man, I think the kid can swim. I feel like he's not just some flash in the pan. We saw those first-round finishes. We thought, okay, well, what happens if he gets extended? What happens if someone stands up to him? I know with Thomas Gifford, we can say what we want. But, hey, man, they went a tough 3 rounds. And Roosevelt showed me that he can go the 3-round distance, being a tough fight where, he was in control for a good bit of that fight, but he had to overcome some adversity as well, fend off some submission attempts. Here with Vinc Pichel, it's a different story. Look, Vince hits like a truck. The guy can wrestle. He's just well-rounded. He's been around the block. He's fought a lot of guys, so this is going to be a serious test, and I respect Vince a lot. I'm also a big fan of that Tough 15 season. You got a lot of great fighters that came out of there. Obviously, Chiesa, Vic, Pichel, Iaquinta, and Miles Jury. There are lots of guys that are still in the UFC came from that season of The Ultimate Fighter. Even guys that didn't make the house, have had success in the UFC. Guys like Drew Dober, for example, right, Shaq? Didn't he lose on the tryouts of that season?
Dober.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Even John Tuck, he got his ass beat by Iaquinta, if I remember correctly. What's up, Rockstar?
What's up, guys?
Cecilia.
I definitely think that Vinc Pichel has been pretty damn battle tested, and here with Roosevelt Roberts, it could be first L time, but I just think the length and the funkiness of this kid, Roosevelt Roberts, is going to be the difference here, man. I think that he brings something a little bit different to the table. The way he locked in that guillotine choke on Daryl Horcher, man, we haven't seen shit like that too often, man. The angle he had him at, dude had to try to climb out the cage to try to get out of that, and obviously he couldn't.
My boy, Devin Powell almost choked Horcher out, too.
And that's just facts.
I mean, Horcher likes to leave his neck in there.
Look, I've been impressed with the guy, and his Contender Series fight was good too, but this is the biggest step up of his career. Let's see if he's up for the test, man. I'm definitely not laying that price. Good luck to those who are. It is a dog or pass situation. I know some sharps are on Vinc Pichel, so I can't wait to see how this one plays out in the lightweight division. Now this is going to be very interesting because next up in the welterweight division, we got Demian Maia. He's 26-9, and Anthony Rocco Martin, formerly known as Tony Martin, is 16-4. Currently, they got Demian Maia minus 185. The comeback on Anthony Rocco Martin is plus 160. Well,
can we stop with this Anthony Rocco charade already? No, I'm just kidding.
The question here, is my boy Tony Martin about to get backpacked for 3 straight? Maybe even Mataleo rear naked choked? Or do you think this is going to be a guy? Look, I know he's not going to come out here with the Colby or Kamaru game plan. He doesn't have that style. But a striker has beat Maia before. His name is Rory McDonald. Do you think? And Marquardt back in the day. You remember that vicious knockout? The question here is, can Anthony Rocco Martin recreate that success?
Yeah, man, this is a very intriguing matchup because, like you said, Demian Maia, his only losses are to championship-level fighters, and that's just facts. I mean, Nate Marquardt, even though he never touched, he's his former Strikeforce champion. And Pancrase. You know what I'm saying? Then we talk about Rory McDonald, former Bellator champion. Current Bellator champion. Sorry.
Until he fights Douglas again.
Until he fights Douglas in a couple months. But and we're talking about Tyron Woodley, former champion. We're talking about Kamaru Usman, current world champion, and Colby Covington, former interim champion. So he only loses to Chris Weidman, former champion.
Jake Shields,
former champion. So the facts say that Demian Maia only loses the championship level fighters. Rocco Martin has definitely never accomplished anything like that. But one thing Rocco Martin definitely has going for him is talent, man. The guy is definitely very talented. He's got a very good presence about him. He's also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Now, when we look at his history against black belts, it's definitely a little shaky. A lot of Benil tapped him out with the arm triangle and made him quit. Leo embarrassed him in Brazil when he got tapped out. OAM outgrappled.
And that ain't no black belt.
OAM outgrappled him and took him down for 2 rounds. And but he also has submitted one. He submitted Fabricio Camoes, who always gets tapped out for some reason.
Hey, my boy Fabricio Camoes lasted 25 minutes in a bare knuckle fight with Anderson Silva.
And he beat Felipe Oliveri, who's a black belt. He beat Sergio Morais, who's a legitimate, serious black belt, a guy that beat Kron Gracie in jiu-jitsu. So, his history against black belt's a little 50-50-ish. But Demian Maia definitely trumps all those guys in terms of just the control. Demian Maia, the thing is with him is, at the current line, it is minus 185. How old is Demian Maia? 36, 37?
No, more like 40.
40? Okay, so...
I think he's 43, honestly. Let's check how old this motherfucker is.
He's just turned 40, maybe.
He's 41.
Jesus Christ. Motherfucker's 41. Never mind, he is 40. I was thinking he was like 38 maybe. But yeah, Demian Maia is 41 years old. And, when I look at Demian Maia, like I said last week about John Lineker, who ended up pulling out of the fight with Robbie Font, when you really look at...
Let me ask you something. How the fuck do you get a cut on your forehead the day of the...
It's what happens when you're done.
Like, do you think he made that up? Like, it's John Lineker. He pulled out of that Rob Font fight the day before, and he said he had a cut over his forehead. Like the weight cutting day, he said he had a cut over his forehead.
Must have fell.
He must have
put the Brazilian stunt.
Demian Maia is 41 years old, and when I look at his stock, I know he's coming off a submission win, but at one point, Demian Maia, in comparison to Lineker, was number 1 in the world, number 2 in the world, coming out the fight with Woodley. But now, guess where his ranking is? Number 11.
Who, Maia?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Number 2. Like, go to...
Are you fucking serious?
13 or yeah?
God damn.
In the UFC ranking, he's like number 12.
My boy Maia's... He's fell down that far? Holy shit.
Yeah, bro, he's dropped like 10 spots.
Damn! He's not even top 10 no more. Holy shit.
Demian Maia is no longer...
Wait, you're telling me Anthony Pettis and Darren Till are ranked ahead of Demian Maia?
Pettis knocked out Wonder Boy.
Who? Okay, fine. fine. He beat George and Whitaker. You're right.
Yeah, Pettis knocked out Wonder Boy. Until knocked out Cowboy. And he beat Wonder Boy.
The only thing Till knocked out was a taxi driver in
Firstly, Darren Till's a complete fraud. But yeah, like I was saying, Demian Maia's stock is dropping. He's not the same guy he once was. And I understand the idea that, when he's not fighting the Colbys, the Usmans, the Woodleys, that most likely he's going to get a submission. And that could very well be the case here. But from a betting perspective, long term, even though this ain't long term, I just don't think that's the way to approach a fight like this. I think that at this stage in Demian's career, you got to start seeing which one of these up-and-comers is going to start taking him out. Because, he's not going to hover around the title. Well, he's not in the title picture no more. So, he's going to start, at 41 years old, these young cats are going to start coming in here and taking him out at some point. It's just a matter of, can Tony Martin keep that focus for 15 minutes? Because, when you fight Demian Maia, you got to fight a super disciplined fight. And, we know he can't stuff the takedown straight up like Colby and Usman can. The thing is, if he somehow gets Demian to use all that energy on top of him in the first round, can he come back in that second and third and start landing that straight right hand? Because I'll tell you what, Tony's got a Calvinish type straight right hand. It's very straight and it's very accurate. And if one of those twos land on Demian's old 41-year-old ass, don't be surprised if he starts pulling stunts and flopping to his back. And once that happens, we know it's only a matter of time before Demian starts looking like a mummy with blood all over his face. And he's probably going to get knocked out at that point, because I just don't know how much more ass whoopings the guy can take. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I know he's coming off a nice little win over Lyman Good. The guy's only 2 wins are against fucking Andrew Craig and Saunders. Like, you know what I'm saying? That guy's a complete joke. So, I definitely rate Rocco Martin above that guy. But, I hear Rocco Martin's got a lot of shit going on right now. I hear Rocco Martin's got a lot of shit going on right now, and I'm not gonna put him on blast, but I just hear his personal life is in a little bit of turmoil right now. Is it a good time? At least I will say this is a spot where the bookies are not, or the public ain't overvaluing him. Generally, in spots like this, you get the prospect is a little overvalued, and they got him as a pick'em, and then the guy that's counted out comes in here and gets the win. But at least Tony's a decent sized underdog. So, if you guys play Tony, man, I definitely understand. I don't know how much this 41-year-old guy can hover around in these rankings, especially with the guys coming up at 170s, the Rocco Martins, the Ponzas, the Leons, even
Bilal's not right.
You guys got Jeff Neal and Nico and these motherfuckers that ain't even ranked, you know what I'm saying? Elizu. Definitely think there's a chance Demian Maia gets knocked out here. When I look at the grappling, whenever anyone shoots in on Tony on a single, he likes to attack with Kimuras. But I'm not going to say that that's what he's going to do here, I'm sure he's got to make an adjustment and know, all right, look, I can't play with the Kimuras, I can't play with the Darces, I just got to keep it on the feet. And that's what he said he's going to do. But I'm going to pick Demian just because, if he gets a first-round submission, it will definitely make sense. I mean, other black belts have definitely tapped this guy out, but at the same time, betting perspective, it's definitely 100% dog or pass. Personally, I just don't think playing chalk minus 180 on a 41-year-old deteriorating fighter like Demian Maia is a good idea. But I will pick him just because, I definitely see the hole for the takedown. Tony Martin puts a lot of weight on that front leg. The single attempt is definitely there. But we'll see what happens. I'll pick Demian, but if I was going to play this fight, I'd definitely have to be Tony.
Like you said, man, which one of these prospects is going to come out here and take Demian's spot in the rankings and join the top 15? That's obviously what Rocco Martin's looking to do. It's just a question of if he can fend off what many people prior have not been able to fend off for years. And unless you have serious wrestling credentials or a black belt in jiu-jitsu like Tony is, it's going to be pretty tough to fend off a guy like Demian Maia because his level, I mean, basically it's not just about jiu-jitsu, man. It's about his jiu-jitsu for MMA, and his control in there is second to none. I mean, as soon as he takes your back, that round's over, and he can submit some guys. I don't think he's going to strangle Rocco Martin, man. I think that Rocco can survive, can tuck that chin, can fight the hands, but I don't think he can shake him off his back. So basically, when Maia takes his back in that first round, basically, if you're betting on Tony, hope to start the next round and then hope to have a fresh start. Basically, that's how it's going to have to go because as soon as he takes that back, that round is over. You got to start again the next one. So hopefully, for your sake, in that second and third round, you have that walking mummy version of Demian Maia. Then the takedowns start coming from a mile out. Then you're able to sprawl on them. And from there, that's when Rocco Martin can start to add up some of the damage. The thing is, I don't see that happening up until maybe the third round. And by then, it might be too late unless he can go out there and get a finish. So I do think the number's good, though. I mean, you're getting plus 175 on a guy like Rocco Martin. I do understand this is betting. It is about the number first. But as a pure pick, I will also go with Demian Maia. I do think that he can win 2 of these 3 rounds. But much respect if Rocco can rise to the occasion, man, because it's always cool seeing these young up-and-comers replace the old veterans that have been taking up the rankings for like the last decade or more. So I'm going to be rooting for Martin as much as I like Maia, but my pick is Maia here. Co-main event of the evening in the flyweight division, we got Jussier Formiga. He's 23-5, and Joseph Benavidez is 27-5. Well, Shaq, this is a rematch. Obviously, you remember the first time they fought, Joseph Benavidez needed less than 5 minutes to go out there and knock Jussier Formiga out. Now, since that point, Jussier has risen up. Now he's the number 2 flyweight on planet Earth. I mean, he's really rounded out his game. Joseph Benavidez, he's one of these guys where he's cleared out the division to the point where now he's rematching these guys that he already beat once, like Dustin Ortiz. Now he's rematching Jussier Formiga. Is Joseph Benavidez going to keep that perennial number 1 spot or not?
Definitely has cleaned out the division. I mean, has he though?
Besides Demetrius, who no longer if they ever fight again.
He lost to Sergio, so he ain't cleaned out shit. Fucking, and he beat Ortiz. Like
he's coming off. He beat Cejudo too.
Did beat Cejudo. My boy Cejudo fought emotional that night. Joe B got in his head. Props to him. You know, he talked that shit to him and Cejudo fought with emotion and he weaseled him out for the victory. No, I feel like Formiga's definitely evolved evolved a little bit more since the last time they fought. Benavidez definitely has a little bit more activity rate considering Formiga only throws, only lands about 1.5 strikes per minute and he's more of a backpacker. It's really going to come down to how the scrambles go. They're kind of even though, I feel like Formiga definitely. I mean, Formiga's been on a little run. He lost to Borg, and ever since he came to ATT, he's definitely been doing his thing. With his wins over Sergio, and the thing is with these wins is they've been dominant wins. With Sasaki finish, Ben 10 finish, Pettis 30-27, Dice to get hot. I think it was a 30-27 as well. He's more of a guy that's gonna, he could be in there with a Makovsky or an Ortiz, a Sergio, and and it's gonna be a close fight. He did finish Alex Perez very badly. Benavidez has good activity, definitely could win a decision here, but I'm actually going with Formiga. I feel like Benavidez is gonna have a little of an off night. Formiga is gonna do a lot better in the scrambles than people think, so I'm gonna go with Formiga.
I definitely think Formiga is going to do way better than he did the first fight. I don't think Formiga is going to come out here and get knocked out in the first round. I just think that he's made such big improvements in his stand-up that he's caught up to the point where you can hang with Joseph Benavidez for the 3-round duration. But the first thing you said is the reason I'm going to pick Joseph Benavidez here, and that's that Joseph lands way more than Formiga, almost twice as much, man. And for that reason, where I think the fight's pretty even everywhere else, I just see Joseph Benavidez simply outpointing Jussier Formiga. So it's not going to be a first-round knockout. This time I think Joseph Benavidez goes out there, takes the decision, and my boy Joe B will still be winning at life, if you know what I mean. Main event of the evening, Junior Cigano dos Santos. He's 21-5, and Francis Ngannou is 13-3. Currently, they got Francis Ngannou minus 240. The comeback on Junior Cigano dos Santos is plus 200. Well, Shaq, ever since Francis Ngannou took that L to the Black Beast, He needed less than 30 seconds to starch both Curtis Blades and Cain Velasquez. And Junior Dos Santos, I mean, I'll tell you what, the guy's on a win streak now, 3 fights in a row. Just beat the Black Beast, who beat Francis Ngannou. With both guys having such big momentum coming into this main event, who do you think takes the next step towards the title shot?
Francis Ngannou had to take those 2 L's to really move on as a fighter. And I feel like every fighter at some point, especially in the UFC, has to go on. I mean, when I look at every fighter on this card, I mean, just about all of them have been embarrassed on national TV, you know what I'm saying? Except Roosevelt.
So far.
And his is coming at some point. Menifield and his is coming at some point. So Francis, like I said earlier in the show, he got too cocky. He had to, like I said, he was going to France, partying a couple weeks before his fight. He pulls that stun in there against Stipe Miocic, who, let's just go ahead and say, Francis ruined Stipe's chin in that fight. Stipe came back and got knocked the fuck out in his next fight.
You can say that.
Yeah, so, I wish Stipe the best of luck in his fight with Cormier. I can't wait. But, I feel like if Francis is focused, I truly believe that, I don't want to say nobody can beat him at heavyweight or 205, but I think that if Francis is truly focused and is truly in shape and his head is in the game, I think he's borderline unstoppable. I think that if this guy hits you on the chin, I just think that, the Stipe fight was a rush. It was I want to get this guy out of here in 30 seconds, and it was a 5-round fight, and he completely blew his energy load. And then the Lewis fight, that fight trickled into the Lewis fight. His confidence wasn't there. He didn't even throw. I know Lewis won, but I don't even consider that Lewis beating him. I consider that Francis beating himself. And then the Blades fight and the Cain Velasquez fight was nothing short of spectacular there, man. So I think it's going to continue in here. I really don't think JDS is as back as people think. I feel like I don't want to say is a beneficiary, but, that was Bogoy Ivanov's UFC debut. Tai Tuivasa is a complete fraud, like I told you a couple weeks ago. And Black Beast, Black Beast is a nice guy. We love his comeback wins, but you can't pull off these comeback wins all the time, man. Those comeback fighters have very short shell lives, and Black Beast, unfortunately, is one of them. Black Beast is a guy where long term, I honestly don't see it working out. At least I don't think he'll hold that ranking that he was a few months ago. But, JDS showed that he can get wobbled still, man, in those fights. And Francis is a different animal. He possesses a different level of power. Let me not say different level of power, but, I feel like when he's focused, that this guy can capitalize on mistakes very well in comparison to those other guys, especially a lot sooner. And I think he's going to do that here with another first-round vicious KO of Junior Dos Santos.
Yeah, I mean, look, Junior Cigano is arguably the more well-rounded fighter, even on the feet. Just the way that he sets things up with his hands, jabbing to the body, then mixing it up top. He actually has a very underrated calf kick game. He's knocked guys out with spinning back kicks, as you saw against Mark Hunt. And allegedly, he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, which Francis Ngannou disputed recently. He said, my boy Francis is questioning that black belt, by the way. But on paper, Cigano does have a black belt, so he is the more well-rounded guy here. But the thing is, Francis Ngannou possesses the kind of power where, his punches don't have to be the prettiest. It doesn't have to be as technical or as precise as a guy like Cigano. But when he sets up things properly, he doesn't even need to hit you flush to knock you out cold. And I really do believe that if guys like Tuivasa are going out here and rocking Junior Dos Santos, and Tuivasa lost his composure, it was his first main event. He's hurting a legend that he probably had a poster on his wall of. And, and then he walked in there with his hands down and got knocked the fuck out, you know what I mean? And Black Beast, I love the guy, but it's just a completely different matchup because Francis and Junior are going to stand and bang until one man falls. And I would take Francis in that kind of fight against anyone in the heavyweight division. And I really don't think that Junior is going to come out here with some kind of wrestling game plan. Even if he does, I think that's just going to gas him out really bad. And I got to say, even though that second Blades fight was really short, I saw some things I liked, man. And the way that Francis was digging in for those underhooks and separating on that first takedown attempt, I was like, okay, my boy Francis has been putting in work.
He knocked Blades out to the point where Blades thought it was an early stoppage.
I mean, he knocked Blades out like 3 times in a span of 2 seconds, you know what I mean? We used to talk about Junior Dos Santos' overhand right, man. What about Francis Ngannou's overhand right? Look, it's two different eras of the sport meeting here in 2019. I really do believe that Junior Dos Santos' run from his Fabricio Werdum knockout all the way to his title defense against Frank Mir is arguably the best heavyweight of all time. But that time has come and gone, and now it's time for that new era. I really think that Francis Ngannou is going to knock him out and work his way back up to that title shot. So I'm going Francis Ngannou via first-round knockout. Well, now we got to hit up Kyle Marley for the Big Marley Minute. And joining us now on the Big Marley Minute is Big Marley himself. Kyle, it's going down this weekend in Minnesota, the heavyweights in the main event. How's it going?
Hey, man, not too bad. Coming off a fairly successful week that could have been a lot better, so I still want to make up for it. This is going to be the big winning week. And on DraftKings, man, there's a lot of potential high scores, so I'm looking forward to it.
I respect that attitude, my man. It's not often you see a guy coming off a 4+ unit win talking about how he wants to do better, but that's what we have here with Kyle Marley. And, man, in the main event between Ngannou and Dos Santos, what's interesting about it is you see the 8,800 next to Ngannou, you see the 7,400 next to Dos Santos, and you know for a fact one of these guys is going to win via vicious knockout. It's going to cover that salary. Which way you going?
Actually, I think if JDS wins, it could be by unanimous decision. But yeah, if Ngannou wins, it's probably by vicious knockout. And I think that's the most likely outcome, just with his power and JDS's chin issues and his age and the beatings he's taken. I think the most likely outcome is a first-round knockout from Ngannou. And usually at like 9,400 or whatever he is, it's hard to really afford him, because if he goes out there and gets a one-punch knockout, he's sitting there at 100 points. So that's not going to do it at 9,500, but now at 8,800, that will put him on the optimal. So I think he's the best play on the slate. I'm going to have a lot of them. But JDS is very live here. If he can avoid the knockout, he's going to win this fight. He's just the better all-around fighter. Way better striker, way better movement. If anyone's going for takedowns here, I think it's going to be JDS. He's got the better cardio. Just everything about his game is better other than power and chin. So I think he's very live here, so I will not be fading him. It's just that he's got to avoid that knockout, and it's hard to imagine that happening, but Ngannou's going to be so highly owned that having some JDS in your lineups is going to be smart. It'll be contrarian, even though this is the main event. So I would like to go overweight on both of these guys if possible. But yeah, give me Ngannou by first round finish.
So Benavidez is rematching for Formiga. Obviously, the first time Joe B knocked him out in the first round, but since that point, both guys risen up to the top of the division. I mean, Benavidez has always been perennial top 2 in the world, but now he's number 1. Formiga's number 2. Who do you think gets it done in the rematch?
I'm going to take Benavidez here, but I think it's going to be unanimous decision. I don't see a finish coming from either one of these guys. I do think a knockout would be more likely from Benavidez, and a finish on the ground would be more likely from Formiga. I just think this is going to be a 3-round striking match for the most part, and with it being the co-main event, it's going to get a lot of ownership, and I don't feel confident enough in either guy to be overweight when they're going to be 20+%, 30+%. So I think the move here is to just fade this fight or be underweight to it. And let everybody else get ownership. But for 400 more, I can go get Ngannou. So I'd much rather do that than get Benavidez. And same thing with Junior Dos Santos. For 400 less, I can get him over Formiga. So there's just a lot better plays on this card than these ones. So I'm going to be underweight to this fight as a whole, but I do think Benavidez wins 30-27.
So Demian Maia is taking on Anthony Rocco Martin. As we know, Rocco Martin's been killing it ever since he moved up to 170 pounds. The question here is, can he beat a guy in Demian Maia who, historically speaking, unless you got the wrestling credentials of, a Colby, a Kamaru, a Tyron Woodley, or your top 5 in the world like Rory McDonald, chances are he's going to backpack you or choke you out. Which way do you see this one going?
Yeah, I'm on Maia here. I think he just has a much better chance at being on the optimal lineup. He's a lot more alive for a finish than Tony Martin is. He's going to be the one looking for takedowns. He's probably going to be looking for him right away. If he can get him, he can get a first-round finish. And that's actually what I'm picking here. I'm taking Maia by first-round submission, so that's making me like him. Only 8,600, so there's a good chance that puts him on the optimal lineup. And that's another reason I don't like Benavidez as much, because I'd rather go to Maia. Martin, on the other hand, I think if he wins, it's probably going to be a striking-based decision where it's not going to be super high scoring. And even at 7,600, I don't think that's going to put him on the optimal lineup. I think he's also going to have a decent amount of ownership this week based on how many people I've seen picking him. So I think I'm going to be underweight, if not fully fading Martin this week, and just give me my exposure to Maia.
So, speaking of some of the brightest prospects in the UFC right now, there's a kid named Roosevelt Roberts, and seems like they're bringing him along the right way. Now he's taking up that next logical step up the ladder in Vinc Pichel, the tough 15 veteran, always a tough out. Which way you leaning here, man?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Roberts. I just think he has a higher ceiling in the sport, more ways to win, and I like his ground game a good bit. But, man, what I really don't like about this card is there's not a lot of underdogs to like. And Pichel, I mean, he is live for a knockout here. If he wins, it's probably by knockout, and if that happens, he's going to score highly. So that's what's making him more my preferred play. It's not because I think he's going to win. It's just if he wins, he's going to score high, and I don't really like any other underdogs. So I'm going to be overweight on Pichel here, even though Roberts is my pick. I think Roberts is going to get a unanimous decision win here, but I like other people to get finishes more, so I'm not going to be able to get too much Roberts into my lineups. So, yeah, even though I'm picking him to unanimously win, I would rather just take the upside of Pichel at 7,300, and I'll be hoping for the knockout because I'll have a lot more of him.
So, speaking of underdogs, there's a matchup also in the lightweight division between Drew Dober and Polo Reyes. And interestingly enough, they got Polo Reyes 6,700. Now, if we're going up against, a wrestler or something like that, I completely understand. But it seems to me like Drew Dober likes to stand and bang with everyone he fights. That means he's going to give Polo Reyes the type of fight he wants. That being said, are you willing to dip in and take that 6,700 on the dog, maybe pay the big price for the favorite, or are you passing altogether, Kyle?
I would rather just take the dog here because if this can go 3 rounds, then even at 6,700 in cash at least, I'm totally okay with Reyes. Give me 35 points and a loss as the cheapest guy on the card. I'll totally take that. But 9,500, it's kind of pricing Dober out of all or most of my lineups because I would rather get guys that are cheaper than him who have a better inside the distance line, really. I do think if there's like a fight that scores highly in the first with a lot of strikes and ends at the very last second of the first round, that could be Dober, and that would totally put him on the nuts with like 130 DK points. I could see that happening. So I don't know if I want to fully fade him here, but that 9,500 is really hard to pay for him when you got, Ngannou for $700 less, guys like that. So my preferred play is just Reyes. I just think Dober does get the win. I think he's the better striker. He's probably going to go out there, get a 30-27. That's what I think.
And last but not least, you got the return of Paul Craig. It's always fun when you have a Paul Craig fight in there. He's taking on Alonzo Menifield. Now, Kyle, before you break this one down, I kind of need to know something. What kind of points are we looking at when Paul Craig, takes that whooping up front and then comes back with that last-minute submission? Does he rack up points doing that?
68 over Kennedy and 67 over Ankalaev. So
not really, huh?
No. Even that's not even going to 10x his 7,200's price here. So the guy to like is definitely Menifield here. I mean, he's got the way better striking. He should be able to keep this fight on the feet. I guess the worry is that Craig is going to pull guard, or maybe he could get a trip takedown, something like that. But if the fight hits the ground, Craig is very live in this fight, no matter what round it is. And if it's the first round, he's probably going to be on the nuts. So I'm not gonna avoid him. I've been fading him before, and it hadn't. I don't think he's been on the nuts for fading him, but I've been too heavily against him with no exposure to him, where I don't want it to happen again. So I will be heavy on Menifield here. I think he gets a first round knockout, but I will be hedging some lineups, and I'll have at least one Paul Craig this time because Menifield is green, and if this fight hits the ground, I think he could be in some trouble. So this is going to be one of the best fights to target on the card, I think. The inside or fight doesn't go to decision line is minus 410, I believe. So that makes it one of my favorite GPP fights overall. But give me Alonzo by knockout, first round.
Kyle, when it happened with Ankalaev, at first it was kind of like, fool me once, shame on me. But then it happens again with Kennedy Nzechukwu, and it's like, man, is this going to be a recurring theme? Is this guy Paul Craig about to really finish multiple people with triangles with, in the last round?
That's the worry, man. I mean, because I've seen it twice, it's in my head. So I'll throw at least $15 away, throwing one lineup in there with Craig, just in case he does it in the first round this time. But man, I hope he gets knocked out and I can finally get a lot of points picking against him.
Well, Kyle, that's why you are the DraftKings guy for Half the Battle. It's going down this Saturday in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. They can watch it on ESPN. Kyle, they can follow you at Big Marley 3, and your bets and your write-ups are available at bestfightpicks.com.
That's right, man. I'm finishing those up right now. I will be sending those your way. They'll be available for purchase. So go get on the bets, get the write-up. Let's make some money this week.
Thank you very much, Kyle Marley. Well, Shaq, now we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So what is the fight to watch for UFC Minneapolis?
My fight to watch is going to be Alonzo Menifield versus Paul Craig. I want to see if this Scottish, isn't he a teacher, math teacher or something? I know he's a librarian or something. I don't know. But, I want to see if this guy can pull off another fluke sub because, if he pulls off another one of these, this guy, they're going to have to sign this guy for life, man. This guy's pulling off subs in the last seconds of fights, pulling subs off when he's down on the cards to the point where he's got no chance to win. And, Menifield's a very green guy, but Menifield's also a prospect, so I want to see how Menifield approaches this test, if he can get revenge for his teammate Kennedy. And if Menifield wins this fight, Paul Craig's a good one to have on your resume at 205.
My fight to watch is the featured welterweight bout between Rocco Martin and Demian Maia. We know what the UFC are trying to do here. They're trying to test out their welterweight prospect in Tony Martin against the vet, the legend. Is Demian Maia a future Hall of Famer or no? Most submissions in UFC history? He's a future Hall of Famer between you and me. So test him out against the future UFC Hall of Famer, one of the greatest jiu-jitsu artists in the history of the sport, and let's see what Tony Martin's got. So for that reason, Martin versus Maia is my fight to watch. Shaq, who is your fighter to watch for UFC Minneapolis?
My fighter to watch is going to be Anthony Rocco Martin. Before he made his UFC debut, he was the top prospect on the local scene. This guy fell on tough times. I think he jumped out, 1-3 to start off. And, he picked himself back up very respectably. Up a weight class now. He's undefeated. Biggest test of his UFC career. If he gets this win, he's in the top 10 in the welterweight division. He's about to skip a lot of guys that had a lot more fights in them. Then you're going to see a lot of guys. Then we can see these new welterweight matchups like Rocco Martin versus Pons, Rocco Martin versus, Elizu, things like that. So let's change this welterweight division. So Rocco Martin's my fighter to watch.
My fighter to watch is Dalcha champion. Look, there's a guy coming in with credentials as champ down in South Africa. And we know with these emerging fighters from Africa, you got the Francis Ngannou's, Kamaru Usman, Razak Al Hassan. There's even more Sodiq Yusuff. These guys bring something very different to the table in terms of their athleticism, their pure power. And I do think that Dalcha champion possesses that for the light heavyweight division. So I'm very intrigued to see what he brings to the table here, especially with such a favorable matchup. So for that reason, Dalcha champion is my fighter to watch. Well, Shaq, it's going down this Saturday in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Quite a difference from the South in Greenville. Now they got it in the Midwest in Minnesota. Heavyweight main event. They can follow you at MMA Genius 05. They can follow me at Best Fight Picks. Go to bestfightpicks.com for the plays. All I got to say is it is going down at UFC 239 and UFC Sacramento. This weekend as well at UFC Minneapolis, bestfightpicks.com. Also, Inner Tops have highly competitive MMA lines and a $200 or Euro sign-up bonus. Click the link in the description right now. Make sure you follow me at Best Fight Picks. Subscribe to Half the Battle on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, and Spotify. BestFightPicks.com for the plays. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.